All right, welcome back for another edition of our Thursday Night Live. My name is Gino D'Angelo. I'm a local real estate agent right here in Northern Michigan, putting out content to make you a more educated home buyer, to learn more about the area, to find out what's going on in Northern Michigan, what you need to know, and basically giving you the inside scoop from a local, somebody that's in this market every day. I've really enjoyed making this content for you. This is probably the fourth or fifth lives we've done, and whether you're watching it live tonight or you decide to watch it later on, I'm super happy that you've joined us. I can't thank you enough for giving us your attention. There's a lot of things you can watch on the internet, and I'm honored that you spend your time with me. So welcome. Thanks again for joining us. If you're watching this either live or after the fact as a recording, please drop a comment or let me know where you're from. Always like to know where people are joining us from, and we have a really special guest tonight. Somebody that I enjoy personally hearing from, and every chance I get, I try to have him on either the podcast or the live tonight. Mr. Sam Bailey with the Northern Lakes Economic Alliance. I want to make sure I got that right, NLEA. So I'll bring Sam on in a minute. I originally was introduced to Sam at an event the Chamber put on. Sam may or may not know this, but he was probably, I'd been thinking about doing a podcast for a while. And hearing Sam speak was probably the first time I thought, this is the kind of content I want to be able to capture. I was in a room at the Odawa Casino, a conference room with a couple of other business leaders here in Petoskey, and Sam gave a great presentation and really broke down the numbers and analytics of Northern Michigan. And if you're like me, the easiest way for me to understand something is when somebody turns it into a math problem, and Sam does that. He's incredibly intelligent. He's the strategic, I want to make sure I get this right, Sam, strategic initiatives manager. So without further ado, let's all give a warm welcome to Sam Bailey. Welcome, Sam.
Good evening, Gino. Thank you for having me, and thank you for that very kind introduction.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking time. I know you're a busy guy. It's 7:00 at night here in Michigan, local time. So I did a poor job introducing you. Give yourself an introduction. Let everybody know who you are, your history. You're a rare case of somebody that grew up in Harbor Springs and actually lives in Harbor Springs. So, a lot of people grow up here and then go someplace else. So you're like me, grew up here, stayed here. So give us a little bit of a background of who you are, what you're into, and what you're going to share with us tonight.
Yeah, so good evening, everyone, or anyone watching at a later date. My name is Sam Bailey, and I have a bit of a unique role in the area. So I'm actually shared between two organizations to make Gino's introduction a little more difficult. So I am the Strategic Initiatives Manager with the Northern Lakes Economic Alliance, which is a local economic and community development nonprofit. So we help businesses access resources to grow and expand, and we help communities access resources, to invest in their infrastructure, to invest in their parks, and increase the quality of life in their community. So that's with my NLEA hat on. I'm also shared with Michigan State University Extension, and so as a land grant university, MSU is, their mission, MSU Extension's mission is to deliver education across the state, not just on campus. And so my job is to educate communities about economic community development, talk about local data, like I will tonight. But yeah, so that's my current role. But I grew up here. I was born at Petoskey Hospital, went to Harbor Springs schools my whole life, graduated in 2017. I went out of state to college, a small college called St. Olaf College out in Northfield, Minnesota. And then I graduated in 2021, which was not a great time to try and graduate and find a job. So I came home, stumbled into an internship with the NLEA, and then transitioned that to full time, and have now grown in the role in the region. But yeah, I'm beyond work. I coach soccer locally. I do ski race leagues at Nubs Knob in the winter. Play pickup soccer with a group of adults. So I'm pretty active outside of work. I've been getting into mountain biking this summer as well. But yeah, it's a great place to live and work.
So you mountain bike, you play soccer, you ski. You are quintessentially Harbor Springs.
Yep. I was fortunate enough that both my parents were on the ski patrol at Nubs Knob and continue are. So my mom's over 35 years, my dad's over 30 years on the patrol. So as volunteers, they have to hit so many days a year. So when your parents have to ski patrol 20 days a year at Nubs Knob, you're at Nubs Knob 20 days a year
Right.
growing up. So it was a great situation to grow up in.
Sam, you said that the NLEA provides resources for local businesses. Can you go into a little bit more depth of what that actually means for anybody that's not familiar?
Yeah, so our organization typically works with established second stage businesses or businesses that are growing and looking to expand. And so some of that might be connecting them with technical assistance, like the Michigan Manufacturers Technology Center, which helps with automation and lean technologies. Other of it is, local policy and financing. So working with local communities, whether it's around regulation and zoning or tax abatements or other incentives to help businesses grow and expand. An example of that is Monti Wood Products
Yep.
over in just outside Petoskey near Bay Harbor. They recently had a couple $1 million investment in their facility, and we helped them and Resort Townships set up tax abatement. So the Resort Townships, their tax base is still going up, but they're not increasing it as much. It'll kind of jump up to the full tax in 12 years, but that will allow that extra money to allow Monti Wood Products to invest that in the facility and help them grow. And we've also helped them with grants and so on, things like that. But we typically help those second stage businesses, who are investing in either in their people or in their location and their equipment, and helping them do that.
So a lot of people watch this channel, Sam. You and I spoke before, but a lot of them are just trying to learn about Northern Michigan to find out if that's someplace they might want to relocate. I've had several people lately come to me that want to relocate here to start a restaurant, or I had a doctor that wanted to open a private practice. What is some um, and be as candid as you want. What is some advice you would give to somebody who wants to come to Northern Michigan to start a business? What's, the good, the bad, the ugly? Because I always say in this channel, I want to be, as truthful and transparent as possible. I mean, obviously, I wouldn't be here if I didn't love Northern Michigan, but like anywhere, there are some challenges. So if somebody had a private conversation with you and they said, Sam, off the record, I'm thinking about opening a business or, moving my business to Northern Michigan, what would you tell them?
It's all going to depend on the business. If you're looking into hospitality tourism, obviously, we are a tourist hospitality outdoor recreation destination. People travel from around the state, around the country to come to our area.
Around the world sometimes.
Yes, and so that's there. So you will have your booming summer season, and then you might have challenges in the shoulder season. So if you're in hospitality, it's about making sure you've got a year-round, base. Whether you're in a restaurant or a retail shop, hotel, we got summer activities. With winter and skiing, we get lots of visitors as well. But those shoulder seasons can be tough.
And you say November is the shoulder month, the shoulders of the shoulder months?
I would say so, yeah, because September is still, you got nice weather, great mountain biking. You can still go to the beach.
Yeah.
October, you get the colors, and then you get lots of visitors for the colors. November, not quite, and then December, ski hills start opening. You start getting the skiers back, skiers and snowmobilers and all that. So if you're in hospitality, you got to deal with the seasonality of things. But and then if you're looking at other businesses, if you're more in the production or manufacturing space, we are in the tip of a peninsula, so supply chains, it's it's a challenge. We got tons of manufacturers up here. 16% of our local economy, our local private sector jobs are in manufacturing. So we do have manufacturers up here. They've just got to work a little extra harder when trying to source their products or distribute to potential customers. So it can be a challenging business climate, but the flip side of that is those businesses that are here and people that are here for a reason.
Right.
And you get really invested business leaders who are invested in the community, engaged in the chamber, local nonprofits, volunteer groups, service organizations. And so, it can be, challenging from supplying and resourcing your organization. But the flip side of that is businesses that are located here are here for a reason. They're here for that quality of life and a number of reasons. So it's going to depend. The classic politician answer is it depends. But, depending on whether what kind of business you're into, if you're looking at healthcare, depending on what aspect of healthcare, just like around the country, we have an aging demographic. Absolutely. So there's going to be increased demand for healthcare in the region. And so if you're in healthcare, maybe that's something you're looking at as a selling point for the area.
So I made a note, Sam, about manufacturing. I want to come back to that because I don't know if I've told you this or not. The part of the presentation that I was at when I was first introduced to you, the part you spoke about manufacturing in Northern Michigan was extremely interesting to me, and I felt like I learned a lot as somebody who prides themselves on knowing the area. So I want to give everybody an idea of what if they stick around tonight and watch until the end what they're going to hear about. We're going to talk about a lot about the changing demographics in Northern Michigan, what makes up our local economy, migration figures, population, that sort of stuff. So to get into that, what would you say makes up our local economy?
Yeah. So, in as we touched on already, hospitality, tourism are kind of two key major industries.
Right.
When you look at the four regions that the NLEA or four counties that the NLEA
Yeah, I
serves,
guess I should have started with that. We get a lot of people that come on here that are interested in Petoskey, Traverse City. Tell the audience the area that you cover so they know what we're talking about.
yeah, so I cover, we as an organization, we cover Antrim County, Charlevoix County, Emmett, and Sheboygan County. So kind of wrapping around the tip of the mitt. So that's as far south as Elk Rapids, up through Charlevoix, Boyne City, Petoskey, Harbor Springs, Mackinac City, over to the city of Sheboygan. So we
So
kind
if
of
you had
wrap
if it was
around.
the mid, it'd be like I don't know if this is going to show up right. It'd be like this side, right? The
Yeah,
northwest side. I mean, Antrim County is the last county before you get to Grand Traverse County. Is that correct? Am I thinking
yeah,
correctly?
correct.
Okay, so you basically
Yeah,
cover
you're right.
all of Northwest Michigan outside of Traverse City. Perfect.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Does
Yeah,
Traverse City, this is
so
a bit off topic, does Traverse City have an NLEA or some version of the NLEA?
Yeah, so they do have an economic development organization called Traverse Connect.
Traverse.
They're a little bit different from us. They're actually a joint, so it's a chamber of commerce and an economic development organization.
Interesting.
They kind of have two separate pillars of their organization. We're solely economic development. We work a lot with our local chambers, but obviously we're not a chamber covering four counties.
Absolutely. Okay, I get distracted on these
Uh,
lives, and where the conversation sort of goes all over the place. So just bear with me, Sam. You're doing a great job. Let's get back to the original question. What makes up the local economy in the areas you covered? Sheboygan County, Emma County, Antrim, Otsego, those areas.
Yeah. So looking regionally, I'm going to talk about these are 2023 numbers looking at
Sure.
private sector jobs. So taking out your local government, state government, your schools, just taking that out. What's making up our local economy? And our top two industries are accommodation and food services, which makes up about 19% of our private sector jobs, and then retail trade, which makes up about 17%. And that's, historic. Our region, as it's currently known, kind of got started as a resort destination in the late 1800s for, Chicago, people from Chicago, St. Louis. So this hospitality tourism aspect of our economy is historic and is, still around to this day. Our third largest industry, though, which surprised a lot of people, is manufacturing at
Yeah.
16%. Then we've got healthcare coming at 13%. And then construction is our third largest or fifth largest, sorry, at 9%. So, and those top five are pretty much the same across our counties. There's some shifts in them, but those top five industries are pretty much the same. I will say, it varies county to county. So if you go to Charlevoix County, which is our manufacturing kind of center in the area, 32% of the private sector jobs in Charlevoix County are manufacturing based.
How did that happen,
When I
Sam?
say
I don't. I'm going to interrupt you from time to time just because you're going to say something that's going to. So bear with me. I apologize.
yeah,
How did that happen? Because a lot of people come out here to learn about the stuff they can't find everywhere. Because I didn't know this until you actually told me this when the first time I met you. How did Charlevoix County become such? Was it accidental? Was it on purpose? Because look, my assistant Candace, her husband works in manufacturing for Lexamar in Boyne City, so that hits really close to home. And if you're driving on M75, there's a correct me if I get these wrong. There's Lexamar, Deifuku, maybe another one I'm not thinking of. I mean, it's almost surprising when you're driving through, northern Michigan to see these big manufacturing plants. How did that happen? Or do you know?
I'm going to say I'm not an expert on it, but going back in time, you had a lot of kind of local production when we were talking. When we had the logging industry and everything was made out of wood, we had local production. Beyond sawmills and stuff like that. But honestly, a lot of it came from downstate business owners who vacationed up here
Yeah.
and kind of wanted to have an excuse to stay up. So okay, we'll open a factory, in northern Michigan. And over time, that just kind of that continued and continued. So what is now Daifuku Jervis Web in Boyne City used to be just Jervis Web before it was purchased by Daifuku, which used to be a different business before it was purchased by Jervis Web. But as far as the concentration in Charlevoix County, some of that comes from you used to have some very, some pillar manufacturers like what used to be East Jordan Iron Works is now
Right.
EJ Inc., which is a global manufacturing. They have foundries and manufacturing facilities all over the world. The joke is if you go to just about anywhere in the world and you look at the manhole cover in the street, odds are it'll say EJ Inc. on it because they've made it. So you have these kind of
Absolutely.
these pillar manufacturers that then other suppliers kind of stood up and kind of started to feed. In recent years, though, Boyne City particularly has been intentional about working with industrial businesses, filling out their industrial park, and supporting those businesses. So the Daifuku expansion that required, or it was about $20 million manufacturing facility that they built new. That required some negotiation between local units of government because that parcel actually straddles like two townships, but they also had to get utilities from the city.
Sure.
So those local units of government said, this is a business that pays good wages, that employs year round. We want to support you. And so in recent years, Boyne City has been kind of the site of some of that industrial expansion because as a community, their leadership said, this is something we want to support.
And I'll be honest, I've said this before on live streams and videos. I think Boyne City, as somebody that grew up here, maybe you can say, you were here, you've been here a long time also. Boyne City is kind of this like not up and coming, but this really cool resort community. And I think that's really happened over the last, correct me if I'm way off, 10, 15 years. It feels like the people that were in charge of developing Boyne City did a tremendous job. They've got, that development, I think it's called One Water Street, where there's some condos. I think that was, the people that used to own Glenn's, their name's escaping me. Glen Cat. I think they did that development where there's like a real estate office, a chocolate place, Cafe Sante, and then some condos. So there's, Boyne City has done a really good job, and I think they are one of the best small towns in northern Michigan because I remember when Boyne City wasn't the Boyne City we know and love today.
Yeah, and it's part of it is that intentionality that I talked about, but also they had one of the benefits of one of my coworkers lives like 5 minutes from our office in Boyne City. She's like, yeah, we wanted to, 10 years ago when they wanted to buy their house, or 12 years ago when they wanted to buy their house, they wanted to look at Petoskey, price out of Petoskey, so like, all right, Boyne City's close by, we'll do Boyne City. So for a while, Boyne City kind of had this influx of people of just being priced out of other areas. That being said, the expansion of their trail networks nearby, so you've got Avalanche Preserve right in town, which has hiking, great mountain biking, disc golf. You also have the Boyne Forest Trail mountain bike system just outside of town, and some newer nature preserves as well. So the outdoor amenities there are great. Plus, you're on Lake Charlevoix. You have this intentional industrial development, which is high-paying year-round jobs. And actually, if you look, I believe, talking demographics, getting ahead, we're losing our families are getting smaller around the country, but also we're aging in our area. Boyne City is most schools are losing, their enrollment's going down. Boyne City schools enrollment is pretty steady. So that means they've got a robust number of younger families with kids in the district. And so kind of all those things working in tandem, a new great city hall and history museum downtown, the Field of Dreams baseball development right on the lake, green space on the water. So, there's a lot of things happening in town. And the nice thing about it is, you go to other communities that are on the lake and waterfront can become overdeveloped and private. The amount of public beaches, green space, parks in Boyne City, right on Lake Charlevoix, is pretty great. So whether you're going for a run or a mountain bike or going to play beach volleyball after work, whatever you want, you can get on the lake in Boyne City, which I think is a selling point for a lot of people.
Yeah, the water is definitely a lot more accessible there. I want to not shift gears, but talk a little bit about something you said earlier. I don't expect you, if you could solve this problem, you'd be so wealthy that you wouldn't have time to do this YouTube live with me tonight. But what do you do? What do you make, or what gives in an area where the jobs you just gave us a minute ago, the majority of the jobs, food service, tourism, those are, whether we like it or not, those are not terribly high paying jobs, mixed with an area that is becoming very expensive to live in. It's sort of like the a movable object meets the whatever, however that saying goes. What happens? How do we overcome that? Because those are two things working directly against each other. When you have an area when the majority of the jobs in the area are lower paying and the majority of the houses in the area are very expensive. So what happens?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, yeah, I'm a skier, so I'm
Yeah,
going to connect a lot of things to skiing. But if you look at like mountain towns out in Colorado, they're kind of like us dialed up to 11, where very high net worth,
sure.
very tourism based, but very difficult to find housing. So it is a challenge that, as communities as a whole, we're starting to, I think our communities are coming to the realization across the region that it's a challenge. And so how you solve that though, that's going to vary community to community. Part of it, as I mentioned, is people just moving farther away. So if you look at our commuter data within our region, 3 out of 10 workers in the 4 counties that I serve
Mhm.
are traveling across county lines every day to go to work.
Say that again. Three out
Very
of ten workers. Say that again. 3 out of 10 workers, because this is important. In northern Michigan,
three
three
out
out
of 10 workers
are traveling.
are
Is that
traveling
factoring
across
in
county lines.
Owen County lines? Does that factor in remote workers, or is that separate?
Remote work data is difficult to find. I'm pulling from public data sources, and
Okay.
federal government is not exactly quick and adept at responding to things. So we're starting to see some data about remote workers, but it's kind of spotty.
Okay.
But this is commuter, so it's talking asking people about their drive to work. So it's kind of
Sure.
an older frame of the question, but that varies across our communities. If you go over to Sheboygan County, um, or let me say, if you go down to Antrim County, like 45% of their workers are leaving the county every day to go to work. Part of that is you've got Traverse City just to the south
Right.
of you as an employment center. You've got Gaylord just to the east,
That's
another
true.
employment center, and Charlevoix's manufacturing sector just to your north. So part of it is just demographics, or not demographics, but part of it's just reality. So we do have people who are moving across the county. So some of it is, I can't afford to live in Petoskey. I'll buy a house over in Sheboygan, and then commute across. So some of that is just commuter data. Unfortunately, we don't have a robust public transportation in rural communities
Will that ever come?
around the country.
In your professional opinion, will we ever have any kind of public transit, or is it just too small here? I mean, we have, isn't this is the Straits area ride? Is that more for elderly? What?
I'm not the most familiar with it. We're such a rural area with relatively, it's a car centric
Right.
infrastructure in the first place that most people are going to have cars. So the use of public infrastructure or of public transportation is pretty minimal. So some of the counties have a busing system. Straits Regional Ride, which is Emmett based. I believe Charlevoix has one as well. Antrim doesn't. So part of it is people just commuting further. What we're starting to see is through some state legislation changes, where we had financial tools to encourage business development, we didn't necessarily have those in housing development. So in the past 5 years, the state's made some policy changes, excuse me, beyond just, hey, we'll give a grant, but local policy changes to help communities finance housing. So in the city of Petoskey, for example, you've got the Michigan Maple Block property, which is being redeveloped into just over 200 units.
Dude, real quick,
And
we can get to that later. Do you have any update on? They're making a tremendous progress. I drive by there all the time. Do you have any update you can share
yeah,
with us later on the Maple? Okay, I'll make it.
so
We'll come back to that.
yeah, we can come back to that. But yeah, so you're starting to see more collaboration among, whether it's your local government helping to, whether through tax abatements, which again, tax abatement, you're not reducing the current tax load, but they're just minimizing the increase to help businesses, people invest in their property. So it could be tax abatements or tax capture to help fund public infrastructure like water and sewer
Sure.
that's got to get to those sites. You're also seeing more partnerships, whether it's employers who are investing in real estate, whether they're making their own housing developments or partnering with other businesses to make that. So it's we're starting to see some organizations and individuals kind of rising to that challenge. But as because we're such a desirable place to live, you're still going to have those high net worth individuals buying homes, and so it's just right now we just need more housing stock at pretty much every level, every income level, and so it's whether it's Habitat for Humanity building a whole neighborhood over towards kind of Lansing area
Yeah.
in Emmett County and things like that. So we do have movement. Um, which is positive, especially if you're a business and you need to employ people and they need to have a place to live. But we can't snap our fingers overnight and magically add a couple thousand housing units for people to own or to rent to resolve the problem.
Sort of a fun question, Sam, and this is just you with your crystal ball, and we're obviously not going to hold you to this. What do you think? How do you think Northern Michigan will look different in 5 years or 10 years than it does today? What do you think is going to change? Will it look very similar? Will it be a version of what it is now? How do you envision Northern Michigan being in the next 5 to 10 years? Because I would say in the last 5 years, it's really changed. And I'm just curious, do you think we're going to keep on that trajectory? Have we, or Sam, has the major change already happened and now this is just sort of the new status quo?
That's a great question, and you're pretty accurate that 5 year number. So just speaking population wise, our regional population declined from 2010 to 2017. And from 2017 to 2022, we've regained essentially the couple thousand people that we lost at a regional level. So that past 5 years number is true. That's when we've experienced some population growth and increased investment, whether from the business or housing world, but increased investment in our communities as well. So um, we've had that growth, and as whether or not that growth, it's going to continue or plateau out, that's the $1 million question. Um, Personally, I think we're going to continue to have people move to the area um, because we have such a high quality of life. Um, whether, but I don't know if that's going to totally replace, kind of our working age workforce. If you look at our kind of in migration community by community, a lot of our in migration is people in a 50 plus demographic.
Right.
So we have people who work their whole lives so they can retire to this area. And so I think we're going to continue to see growth, especially with more remote work opportunities. And as our broadband infrastructure gets built out, I think we'll have people move to the area. We've got some sizable housing developments I can touch on, coming up. But our schools are investing in themselves, so I think we'll continue to grow. But I don't think it's going to be this runaway snowball. I think it's going to be a little more kind of diligent, steady growth.
That's a great response. Who's coming here? Where are they coming from?
That's a great question. So as I mentioned, just demographic wise, if you look at kind of in migration, out migration in our region by age group, um, we really don't start seeing kind of noticeable in migration until we hit that older, 50 plus demographic. As far as where they're coming from, the census releases their American Community Survey every year, and so you're able to see a little bit of where people are moving county by county. And so in our region, a lot of movement within the past, it's only a handful of people moving each year. So, in Antrim County, for example, just over 4.5% of their population moved within the same county in the last year. That's someone, moving from a rental to something they own, moving as a family. Um, we do get in our region a higher share of people kind of moving within the state, but from a different county. So, Antrim is 5%, Emmett is 5%. So we do have, people moving within Michigan. And most of the counties have a relatively small percentage, about 1% or less, who are moving from a different state. So most people who are moving to northern Michigan already have some connection to the area.
Right.
Whether they were already living down in Grand Rapids and are now moving up here. And it's pretty much negligible, but moving from abroad is like less than 1% in all of our counties with a margin of error. So um, that's pretty minimal. But For the little bit of movement we have, most of the folks across most of our counties is people moving from within the state but a different county into our communities.
I'm really curious, Sam, and this is just from my, personal experience selling a lot of real estate. When we have this conversation with you a year from now, are you going to be telling us that, do you believe, or do you have any way to know, because this is my prediction, that you're going to tell us that a lot of the people moving here are not from Michigan? If you look at what happened in Florida, so the trend I've been seeing, what's really interesting about, I'm not you, and you certainly know the numbers more than I do, but I do get a lot of personal experience, and it seems like this year, specifically the second half, with the natural disasters in Florida, with the heat, I've had a lot of people from Texas and Florida say it's just getting too hot here. We've gotten a little bit, maybe you can talk about this in a second. We've started to get a little bit of, I'm starting to hear a little bit that people feel that, and I'm not here to debate politics, that they feel that Northern Michigan is going to be a little bit of a safe haven from global warming. And I think it feels like that type of motivation is really causing people to relocate here. Not that we need another source of demand to, you know, make people flock to Northern Michigan with, the lack of inventory that we already have. But do you think a year from now, this conversation might be different where, yeah, people are moving here from not so much within the state or nearby, but from, Texas, Florida, California?
Yeah, I could definitely see that happening. As we see natural disasters becoming more frequent and more severe. I will say the data, any federal data site is lagging. So the numbers that I just referenced, I could only get 2022. So that's the most recent data. So it's essentially 2 years behind.
Right.
I'll say anecdotally, one of my coworkers in Michigan, MSU Extension, she was hired. She went to college down in Florida, was hired in Lansing about a year ago, and then just recently is now working out of the Boyne City office. She was able to transfer up to the Boyne City MSU office. And for her, it was, she was from the Midwest. She went to school in Florida, wanted to get out of the Midwest. And then she said she had to do her first hurricane evacuation and said, I don't want to do that ever again. And so came back to Michigan and then ultimately, started visiting Northern Michigan from Lansing and was like, well, I like to ski. I like being on the water. Like, let's see if I can get up into that neck of the woods. So I think as Northern Michigan, our narrative, we can sell the quality of life bit.
Absolutely.
But I think as people become more aware of the professional opportunities as well, you're going to start to see that growth. And as I said, most people have a connection to here already. So whether it's they're originally from downstate, or one side of the family, the in-laws have a place here and they visit. Anecdotally, the people that I meet, one of the guys I play soccer with, he lived in Chicago, New York City, and San Francisco for the past 10, 15 years. And then coming out of COVID, he said, wow, housing's so affordable in Northern Michigan when I met him. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, I moved from San Francisco. And I was like, okay.
No, I want to pause that for a second, Sam, because somebody just asked, Adam Widge has asked a question, and you're going to tie in perfectly to this. So Adam says, Texans are invading, but yeah, older demographic makes sense due to cost. That Northern Michigan lifestyle cost, absolutely correct on climate change, which is something I keep hearing. I'm worried about the heat and running out of water. So I want to write this down because I don't want to forget the question. Demographic heat. That's the part that really I talk about this in the videos a lot. You and I, Sam, if I were to ask you, has Northern Michigan gotten a lot more expensive, what would you say?
I mean, I'm pretty young, so I'll say, as a 25-year-old who is still living at home because housing is expensive, I think my parents would tell you, yeah, it's definitely gotten more expensive.
There are people
look at the starter.
And I've sold people houses lately who have come from Texas, like Adam's saying, who they're given the lifestyle in Northern Michigan compared to San Francisco, as you mentioned, Chicago, New York, it's still affordable here. And I don't want to say this and come off as, sound like the greedy realtor, but I don't know that so much Northern Michigan is overvalued right now as maybe it was just undervalued for such a long time. Because, if you go back, if I gave everybody here access to my MLS and they could go back and search what's sold for the last 10 years or what's selling or what you could get for, 300,000 10 years ago, that's now, 700 or $1 million, you would think, that was like a blue light special at Kmart. Those prices were crazy. So I don't know if it's so much that the prices are crazy high now or they were crazy low back then. Which one? Obviously you're 25. If your parents were on this, what would they say? Was it undervalued then or was it overvalued now?
I think my parents would say undervalued,
I think
definitely.
so too.
They both, I mean, they moved here for, my mom's from Harrison, my
Okay.
dad's from Fowlerville downstate.
Yep.
My mom grew up skiing at Snow Snake Mountain in Harrison, and she likes skiing, so she's like, I'll come, I'll be a teacher up here. I'll figure that out. So, but yeah, costs have definitely gone up, across the board, especially when it comes to housing. But
Absolutely.
I mean, the economist in me says supply and demand. If there's enough people who say that's a price they're willing to pay, then that's the
That's what
price.
creates the market, right? I mean, that's the definition of a market. And look, we started this show by saying, you're somebody that skis at Dubs Knob, mountain bikes, play soccer, lives in a beautiful community. You probably see beautiful views every day. If you're driving from Harbor Springs to Boyne City, you're experiencing the beauty of northern Michigan. I mean, that's pretty special, and that is just going to come with a cost.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any
Yeah,
statistics? Oh, go ahead. I'll let you finish.
well, I think of my brother. My brother went to Michigan Tech as a mechanical engineer, works for a local engineering firm, and could he make tens of thousands of dollars more going to Detroit and working for one of the auto manufacturers, like a lot of Michigan Tech engineers do? Absolutely. Would he have to drive forever to ski and not have great access to mountain biking in Detroit? Yeah. So there's the
Of course.
pros and cons and the trade offs, and like I said, it kind of goes back to when we were talking about the business. It could be a challenge to live here, but the people that do are doing it for a reason,
Absolutely.
and they're
They want to live
choosing.
the resort vacation lifestyle year round. I mean, you and I and the rest of us that live here, we get to live the life year round that some people, come here for a week or come here for a couple weeks or come here for a weekend even. So I always say if you're able to figure out, the big hurdle is obviously we keep talking about this is the housing cost, but if you're able to somehow make it over that hurdle and afford to live here, you're not buying. And this is sometimes the conversation I have with a buyer that you have to be all in on living in northern Michigan because in order to justify the prices, specifically in Petoskey, Harbor Springs, or even Boyne City. I mean, Boyne City's still a little bit more affordable than those two, but it's getting expensive. But for you to fully, you know, uh, you know, for you to have those prices make sense, you better be all in on northern Michigan. You better be like Sam out there, mountain biking, skiing, on the water. So like you said, the people that are here are choosing to be here because it's not like you just pick this town on a map and it's there's some areas that my guess is there's some areas around the country that people move to just because they're incredibly affordable. That's not northern Michigan. You better want to be here to pay this price. If you want to drive a Mercedes, you better really want to drive a Mercedes because that's not an affordable option.
Yeah.
Let's change gears a little bit more. Let's talk about. We're actually going to have the president of North Central Michigan College on the podcast in the near future. Talk about the post-secondary education options because I believe one thing I hope I'm going to ask you at the end of this how you hope to see Northern Michigan change, but I hope that Northern Michigan changes by giving people. I'd like to see kids that grow up here, go to school here, come back here, and make their mark on their local community. Because as coming from somebody who I'm a lot older than you. I'm 41. I grew up in Northern Michigan. I came back to Northern Michigan. It's sort of cool to have, to watch an area grow up and grow up yourself with it. So growing up for the longest time, when I was your age, if you wanted a good career, it likely wasn't going to be in Northern Michigan, which is why I chose real estate because that was one of the few ways to make a good living here. Tell us about some of the post-education, apprenticeships, internships. If you're a young professional and you're watching this, either now or later, why should you stick around here after high school?
Yeah, so I think I'm going to start actually still in high school. Our high schools, particularly in, I know the Charlevoix Emmett ISD the most, so Charlevoix Emmett counties, has really leaned into career and technical education in recent years. Even from when I graduated in 2017, it's night and day difference. And so I think we're having this cultural shift away from college is the answer for everyone
I agree.
and should be the only answer. But I mean, if you're looking in Charm, we have a line worker program where you can learn how to be a line worker and go to work for GLE or DTE and make huge money
A lot of money.
right out of high school. They're in Pelson. They have a power sports technology program, so you can learn how to service
Super cool.
ATVs, ORVs, snowmobiles, small engine boats. They've gotten aviation, so you can get your pilot's license in high school. Harbor Springs has a drones program where you can get your drones license.
That's
Point
great.
City has an audiovisual program. So I think, really exposing kids to, professional jobs that maybe that 4 year, you don't need it. Maybe it's an industry certificate, maybe it's a 2 year degree, but, exposing students to that and getting employed right out of high school with, you know, with something you'll get, from that high school CTE program.
I
That's
heard a
one.
really I
Um,
heard a I'm sorry. I heard a really good I don't know where I wish I would have wrote down who said this because I actually love this idea. They said that kids should have to go to trade school before they go to a 4 year college. Because at least at the end of the day, if you go to the trade school, you're going to have something to fall back on. Versus now, it's sort of like going to college. Because so many people now went to college and that didn't pay, their degree didn't pan out or whatever. I don't want to debate that, but whatever happened, they couldn't find a job in that field. So now they're going to trade school. So what do you think about forcing kids to go to a trade school to learn, a trade before sending them to the 4 year college?
I don't know about forcing. As long as you force a kid, it's never going to end well. But I
I
think
agree
just
with that.
making
You
those
can't force them.
options.
I agree with
I
that.
think making those options available. I mean, when I was graduating from Harbor, there were a handful of CTE programs, but it was, you got to do the honors diploma and then you got to go to college. But like,
Right.
I took the drones class when it was like its first iteration, and I was like, I was just a nerd who likes learning about things. I'm like, you're gonna give me a drone kit and I get to solder it together and then fly
Yeah,
it
that's
around?
awesome.
Like, I'll
Yeah, cool.
absolutely do that. But now it's like, hey, you can actually get your FAA drones license and be a commercial drone pilot, and that's a profession that you can
100%.
do. And so I think making those options available to students is just having it there is
Absolutely.
you're starting to get way more pickup from it. Anyways, I mean, Harbor Springs just launched. I think they now have a cosmetology
Oh, is that
CTE
right?
that filled up right away. They had a bunch of businesses come to them and say, "We need people who know this." So the CTE program developed. They got hired an instructor, developed a curriculum for it, and that filled up right away. I think especially with the line worker program in Boyne City, I know a
Absolutely.
number of those individuals. You don't graduate with license right away. You got to go. I think Alpena Community College has the closest lineman program, but basically it gets you in the door, do a lineman program, and now they're working locally for GLE, making over
They get a
100,000
ton of
a
money.
year
Yeah, absolutely.
at 19, 20 years old. And so I think getting people exposed to that, and now maybe you start in that industry, and then maybe you go to school for, I'm a linesman for a couple of years. All right, I'm going to work on a degree. Now I'll move up within the industry, and that's an option
Sure.
rather than just going to college right away.
And being saddled with, student loan debt and, also look, I don't want to get too philosophical on this, but uh, when I went to college, a large portion of it was just, you graduate high school and you're thrown into this new environment. And a large part of going to college was growing up. And, why not grow up through a trade and learn, how to work versus, how to party on the weekends and just have your first experience away from your parents. So no, I'm with you. And I think Sam, you're going to see, and I'm just being, transparent. When I was in high school, the kids that did the trades, there was almost a little bit of a stigma to it, which is really funny to think back to now because, like, I think that has flipped, and now I would argue that, the kids going to the trade school are, I don't think there's that much of a stigma with it anymore. So do you watch that? Is there a larger percentage of kids going to the trade school? I'm not asking you to give me any stats because you probably don't have them, but do you have
Yeah,
any way
I
to
think
monitor that or?
it's that cultural shift that you're talking about. I mean, I'll look at so you'll have Dr. Finley on later, president
Yep.
of NCMC.
Yep.
I'll have Dr. Finley. I won't steal his thunder, but like they've now started doing what they call fast track programs. They're
Okay.
taking things that used to be like giving credits and it was going to be an associate's degree of something, and basically getting rid of all the fluff. And you're not getting earning credits towards a college degree, but you're going to earn an industry credential.
Sure.
And so they can take something that used to take a year, make it take 10 weeks. All right, we'll get you into the workforce now. So they have fast track programs for HVAC, for IT, for, all healthcare, different healthcare jobs. And so I think we're seeing kind of a reevaluation of post secondary education. One thing, and Dr. Finley will talk about it more later, when you have him on, but they're working on building a ladder in the healthcare industry right on NCMC's campus. So you can do a couple week, you can become a phlebotomist or some kind of healthcare tech like that. Then you can get your 1 year, I think it's a certificate of nursing, You can get your 2 year associates of nursing, and now they have a new 4 year. You can get a 4 year bachelor's of nursing without leaving Petoskey. So now they've built
Incredible.
this ladder at the institution where, all right, you get out of high school, you get that quick industry credential, start working. Okay, now you can start working on your associates. Okay, I got my associates. Now I can start working on my bachelor's. And so just kind of this more lifelong version of education than just you do it all right around high school and then you're done. But
Absolutely.
making sure people are working and, and we've all seen the growth of apprenticeships. That's a whole other thing. You've got beyond your traditional, electrician and that kind of stuff that have apprenticeships. Van Dam Custom Boats manufactures beautiful,
Great boats.
stunning custom boats in Boyne City. They do apprenticeship programs. I know Wallstrom's Marine has apprenticeship programs for engine repair and stuff when it comes to that. So you're seeing there's a new, oh my gosh, what's it called? I'm blanking on it. It's right in Petoskey, but there's a new like coding
Okay.
apprenticeship run through an entity right in Petoskey. I'm blanking on their name. So moving from kind of more traditional apprenticeships, what we think of apprenticeships, to other industries as well. So now, if you want to learn a code, you got to go to university. You can stay in Petoskey for graduating here, work on your apprenticeship, get real life experience, get an industry credential, and then enter the workforce with that.
Absolutely. It's great. One thing that when I have Mr. Finley on, I want to pitch that I should become the dean of sales at North Central Michigan College because I think selling, obviously that's personal to me, and I've been a salesman for a long time. I think just teaching kids how to sell. I mean, there's a lot, there's tons of real estate offices here. There's car sales. Sales doesn't have to be something that you sort of accidentally fall into. It's a skill, and there's a lot of different things you can sell, and I think that's something we should see a little bit more of also. But I want to be Sam. I want to be respectful of your time. I told you we were right on an hour. We're getting close to that. If you're just joining us late, I saw a bunch of people hop on. We are on with Sam Bailey from the NLEA talking about all things Michigan, Northern Michigan economics. So we're going to let Sam go here in a minute. So if you do have any questions, make sure you drop them in and I'll have Sam answer them either live. If you drop them, if you're watching this recording, you drop the questions, I'll reach out to Sam and get those answers for you. But Sam, if you were governor of Northern Michigan for the day, and I'll leave you, this is the last question I'll ask, what would you change in Northern Michigan?
That's a great question. Um, I think it's kind of going to be a boring policy answer, but
Okay.
it started to happen in recent years. But kind of just a reevaluation of a lot. So a lot of state and federal resources are just biased towards urban areas in general. Like, for housing development, it could be they might have a walkability score that's like really important for if you get awarded this grant or this support. And like we talked about earlier, we're a rural community, so walkability doesn't necessarily apply to our area. So um, we were currently, previously, a lot of our rural communities were just immediately kind of knocked off the board for consideration for a lot of these supports. Now, with the Office of Rural Prosperity that's been found in the past few years in the state, is really doing a lot of great work. Um, so we're starting to kind of see a reevaluation where now we're starting to see rural communities win more and more of those resources to bring into our communities to improve that quality of life. And so I think it's not necessarily a change, but kind of leaning into that, of really leaning into that and supporting rural communities, because any challenges we're facing as a state or as a country, whether it be demographic issues, workforce issues, housing issues, whatever challenge, it's going to be more pronounced in a rural community. So anything
Absolutely.
you can do to kind of give those rural communities an extra support, um, so absolutely do. I see a question from Adam. What schools in the area offer those programs? Um, if you so we have a couple different ISDs in the area. So Char M ISD, Charlevoix Emmett Intermediate School District. They're the ones I'm most familiar with. I think they have 26, 27 different CTE programs in the ISD, and they will actually handle transportation. So I went to Harbor Springs. We didn't have an autos CTE program, but if you want to take autos, you could get bused over to Petoskey to do that. Or if you want to do the aviation program, you could go up to Pellston. Or if you wanted to do welding, you could go over to Lancet. So that's specific to Charlevoix and Emmett counties. Sheboygan County, their ISD, I know they have welding, autos, and some others over there. So a lot of the schools have a CTE program, and even if it's not included in a specific school, so Harbor Springs has the drones program. Other students will get bused to Harbor Springs to take that drones program. I I think I can pull up the website real quick. Can I just drop the link in the chat? Does that?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Sam, are you okay in time if we go just a few minutes longer?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Give me just a minute, and I'll drop the link in there. Well, it's not going to let me connect. All right. I will send this link to you, Gino, and then you can
absolutely
drop it in.
If you send it to me, I'll drop it in. Once we get off here in a few minutes, I'll post it on the video when it's on our YouTube channel so everybody can see it. If somebody wants to follow you, Sam, where can they do so? And they want to learn more. Look, I don't know anything about NLEA until I met you. I've started to research them. It's a great organization. They get a lot of thought leaders together. They get some really big names at their events in the area. I think they do an awesome job covering everything economic related in Northern Michigan. So where can they find more about you or the NLEA or just keep an eye on what's going on in Northern Michigan?
Yeah, so I think our website would be a first starting place, and that's northernlakes.net. But then also I think people have LinkedIn. We're pretty active on LinkedIn as well. We've got a new marketing person on our team who's way more adept at social media than I am. So LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, we're on all those. Just search Northern Lakes Economic Alliance, and that's where we will highlight different projects we're involved with, but also events we're hosting. May 9th, 2025 will be our big economic symposium that we put on every year.
It's sold out, no? Or no? Is that the one that's sold out, or there's the one before that's sold? I just got the notice it was sold out.
Oh, okay. We don't have registration open for that, so that one.
Okay, so that's not sold out yet, but apparently they do sell out. So if you want to go, make sure you get tickets.
Yeah, but that brings together over 300 community members from the business community, local government, nonprofit leadership, our state elected and appointed officials, all talking about challenges and opportunities in our region. Next year, we'll also be launching a quarterly event series, so once a quarter, and we'll host one in each one of our 4 counties. And that's kind of that symposium, but in miniature. We'll pick one topic, whether it be the outdoor rec industry, or energy affordability for businesses, or talent challenges and solutions. Pick a topic, dive into it, bring in some speakers. And the host of we also put out different research articles and stuff on our website. But follow us on social media will be the best way to kind of see those things as they pop up.
Absolutely. And shameless plug, I don't want to post the link because I don't think YouTube likes when you post outside links. But if you go to wherever you listen to podcasts and look up the Know My Truth podcast, Sam was one of the first guests we had on, and he goes a little bit more in depth in some of these things on that podcast. So make sure you check it out. If this is, look, I love this kind of stuff. I know it's sort of a personality trait, whether you're, into analytics or not, but I love the way you're able to break down Northern Michigan. And I think anytime somebody has the ability to listen to you speak, they should. I'm a huge fan of yours. Is there anything else you'd like to say before I let you go? Do whatever you want to do with your night.
Yeah, well, we didn't get back to it, so I'll briefly mention it. I know, you're typically selling to own as far as homes go, but we're talking about kind of workforce housing.
Yeah. Thank you.
So when we're talking about housing and some of the progress in the area, we've got a number of kind of more workforce housing oriented developments coming in the area. Yeah. So Michigan Maple Block is property right in the city of Petoskey. They demolished the old facility. Cleanup's underway on that site. These will come online about 2026, so 2 years out. But that's 204 units, both studio, 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom units. 102 of which will kind of be reserved for more workforce housing. They'll have some metrics to establish that. that's gonna be a big win for our area.
Have you been following that
Lumber-
thing? Have you been following the Maple? Because I said it earlier, but thank you so much. I was so worried about trying to get you out of here in under an hour. I forgot about that. I go by there all the time.
I don't personally follow it, but one of our staff members is a little more involved with housing
Okay.
and community development, and she's been involved with some of the brownfield work on that.
They're doing a tremendous job. I mean, Elmer's and whoever else is doing it. I mean, they should. It's like a whole production. I mean, there's machines there, and that was a massive undertaking. You know, if you look at the amount of effort it takes, first of all, to tear all of it down, prep the site prep, and then build. I mean, and they're just chugging along.
Yeah, another big one in St. Petoskey, Lost on Lumber Square. I believe that's right off Bennett Street.
That's just down the road from Maple Walk.
Yep. So that's structures going up on that, and that'll be about 60 units. And will probably be sometime in 2025. Those will be coming online. But that's more rental oriented. You know, if you're looking to purchase, Pine Pond is development out on Pickerel Lake Road. Kind of to keep costs down. We're talking about costs. You can buy the home, but you're not buying the land.
Right.
So there's pros and cons to that.
Sam, real quick, we have a lot of people who watch this who are thinking about renting in Northern Michigan, which is fine. So don't glaze over. Renters are welcome here. Renters, hopefully become buyers. So we don't diminish. Give as much rental information as you want.
Yeah, but yeah. So Pine Pond, they have homes on site already. Those are for sale, and they'll kind of build that out. It's going to be a whole community. They're going to have a pond. They're building a community center there. And so that's slowly being built out. They're going to be adding a couple units every year. Some other Northern Homes, CDC, Northern Homes Community Development Corporation, affordable housing organization area. They have a few kind of rent to own options with properties that they have that you'll be renting, but working towards ownership in them. Habitat for Humanity as well. As I said, they're building a whole, I don't have the details on that, but they're building a whole neighborhood up towards the Lansing with, I think they have homes for sale right now that folks
they're affordable.
Do. Yep. And then, you also have Bel Air Lofts. That's a workforce housing development down in Bel Air. They'll be coming online in 2025. Big development over in Sheboygan Commons. Tearing down an old manufacturing facility and putting up, that'll be mixed use. It's going to have restaurants, boutique hotel, event center, gym. That'll be market rate. So I believe by the end of that, and this is years out, but they're going to have well over 50 condos for sale there. Some will be waterfront on the river. Some will be off the river. I'm not exactly sure what the values of those will be, but those are a couple years down the road. And speaking of down the road, we also have, we were talking about housing earlier and what it takes to solve a number of communities, East Jordan, Charlotte, Boyne City, Mackinac City, all have community-owned properties that they have requests out right now. For developers to come in and build mixed use or housing on those sites. As far as the HOA fees associated with, I'm assuming that's in relative to Pine Pond.
Yeah.
I don't know.
They're probably 300. You can look, Sam. I'm sure they're. I'm gonna show the question. I'm sure they're $300-400 a month. That's a typical lot rent.
They do have a website. It's pinepondhomes.com. Land lease, types of housing. Homes range from 100 to 300,000. Utilities. I don't see it on a quick look at the website.
I'm looking at the FAQ. I don't see it either. Oh, right here. What's included in the monthly land lease? A variety of benefits, including access to the Pine Pond beach and lake area. They don't say what the land lease is, but we can certainly find that out.
Yeah. So, but that is a local family, Monti family, doing that development. They employ a couple hundred people in the region. Their employees needed housing, and so they were taking on themselves to do a housing development. And the trade-off to keep costs down is this is the way they solved it to keep costs down. But building nice homes that folks can get into the area.
Sam, I just thought of a question, and maybe you have a way to track this, maybe you don't. Is there a way to find out, or do you know the statistic of what percentage of people that bought homes were renters? Like, what do you have any way to tell at what rate people convert from renting into purchasing? Because once upon a time, the step you rented, then you bought. And I just wonder. I think you're good news, but unfortunately, with the cost of everything, I think people are renting a little bit longer. Do you have any insight into that?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay,
I know the census. You can get some data on like the share of residents who are renting versus owning. And I will say in our region, um, we have a higher share of folks compared to the state that own the unit of housing that they're living in. And part of that is, we don't have significant, apartment developments or, big rental market in there. So a reality is that a lot of people own their units. As far as the conversion rate, I don't I don't know of any numbers off the top of my head that point to that.
what do you track Northern Michigan statistics for this kind of stuff? Do you compare it to the national average, to another area? How do what's sort of the bellwether to see how Michigan, specifically Northern Michigan, is doing, across the country? Meaning, are more people
Yeah.
able to buy homes here versus renting? That sort of thing.
Typically, I'm looking to the state, kind of the state metric, but also we're comparing, our counties to each other.
Right.
So, all right, Charlevoix has this really significant manufacturing sector. Why is that? What can we do? Um, and but yeah, most often to the state numbers kind of as a benchmark. I'll look at U.S. numbers as well. Especially when it comes to big things like demographic shifts. Nationally, we have an aging population. It's just a reality.
Right.
But then you kind of drill down. All right, how does that affect the state? How does that affect our individual counties? But mostly, I'm looking at state as kind of the benchmark. We're going to be doing some more research in 2025, where we're going to potentially start kind of trying to find comparable communities elsewhere in the U.S.
Yeah.
and
Interesting.
maybe doing some numbers there to see how we compare elsewhere.
You mentioned earlier, and I've heard you say this before. I think it's a great analogy, but comparing Northern Michigan to some of the ski towns that are, I'm sure you're thinking of like Jackson Hole or some of the areas of Aspen or wherever that are really expensive that also have to have the service industry. When the NLEA is thinking about how to best help Northern Michigan, do they do that? Do they look at other areas? Because whether it's life or business or whatever, usually your problems you think they're unique to you, but there's somebody else that has the same problem. Are there other areas who have sort of, they say the person you can help best is the person you used to be. Is there any place that used to be like Northern Michigan that sort of figured out how to, you know, connect the dots to make it work for everybody and, have had success? Are there any communities out there that you sort of point to of, what could be next for Northern Michigan? Or is Northern Michigan so unique that it's, you're not going to find another area that's surrounded on three sides by water that has a really heavy tourism with a high, that sort of thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know if we necessarily have the entity that we're looking to. I will say, from an economic development perspective, we talk a lot to our peers, and so we'll go and talk to Lake Spirit Community Partnership, which
Sure.
is the economic development organization, but for Marquette. So they work in Marquette County, similar outdoor rec, but strong manufacturing as well. And we might talk to them. Hey, what have you done? What events have you done? What industries are you focusing on? What tools have you created? But then we also look to kind of the big ones. Grand Rapids is an
Right.
example. A few examples, kind of in Michigan, of an area that's growing, that has growing industry across the board, but is also attracting young people. Obviously, we are not Grand Rapids, but I'm still going to go talk to the right place, is their economic development organization, and I talk to their data guys a fair amount. I'll be like, all right, what data are you tracking? Like, how do you do with it? How do you splice it? How's it
What data
inform?
are they tracking? If you're in Grand Rapids and if you're the Sam Bailey of Grand Rapids, what do you care about? Same thing you care
Yeah,
about, different?
yeah. So they do look at a lot of similar numbers. What how much are businesses investing in the community? How are the demographics shifting? How are wages going? But what they've done is they'll intentionally go after a specific industry. So if you go back in Grand Rapids 20 years ago, the right place, which is the economic development organization down there, they said we want to go after the healthcare industry. We're going to look at healthcare tech, healthcare services, and we're going to go after that industry specifically. Now, if you go to Grand Rapids, they have a section of road called Medical Mile,
Yep.
where they have surgical instrument manufacturers, healthcare, software developers. They've now grown this whole industry around, the healthcare. Now, looking forward in their newer strategic plans, they're looking a lot at technology, whether it's coding, software development, also looking at supply chain jobs as well. So, they've had the resources to very intentionally go, okay, we're going to pick an industry and we're going to run with it. Um, as for our organization, we're serving four different counties and a lot of communities in it. We can't necessarily say this is the one industry for the whole region. We've decided this is what it's going to be. Um, but we are kind of with our strategic plan that's going to be launched beginning of 2025 that we just finished, that we're finishing up writing. We're going to start to identify a couple key industries and okay, what can we do to lean in here and support these industries for those year-round jobs.
One question, if you don't want to answer this, you don't have to, but I'm going to ask you: did the election we just got passed, does that affect Northern Michigan at all, in your opinion?
I'm sure it will. I I don't know how, but it's any federal policy is gonna ripple down and change things. Um, you know, you've had some of the state marketing. The state of Michigan has launched in the last year or so a marketing campaign to attract a younger demographic to
Sure.
the area, and one of the ways that they're marketing that is healthcare and reproductive rights for women, or some of our civil rights protections that we have in the state that other states don't. And so marketing that to other people and say, hey, if you want to have a professional job with a great quality of life and these rights, come to Michigan. So I'll be interested to see how things ripple out. But yeah, any substantive federal policy change is going to impact us. I just don't know what those changes are going to be.
Yeah, it's interesting because we just got past the presidential election, and we've got about a year before we start getting hit with the governor race. So I started paying attention to that a little bit because it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Maybe I'll be lucky enough to get both candidates on. I don't know if I'll be big enough by then or not. Anything else before I let you go, Sam? I appreciate it. We went over an hour. This is the longest one we've ever done. I feel like I could keep you here all night if we didn't start this at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But anything else you want to leave us with?
No, I'm good. I like getting on my soapbox about these things. So
Absolutely. This is a platform. Anytime you want to come back, I'd love to have you back, at least once a year or once every 6 months, because you've got your finger on the pulse, and I'd love for this to be your soapbox.
yeah, but I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for the time. Thank you for people asking questions and participating. As I talked about earlier, if you're trying to connect with the NLA, you can find us on our website, northernlakes.net, or on any of our social media. We're trying to, support local businesses, support local communities, and help, improve the quality of life in our area.
You do a heck of a job. All right, Sam. Have a good night. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to let Sam go and then sign off. Really, really, really good conversation with Sam here tonight. We went over. I appreciate this is the most watched episode we've had so far. I was watching how many people were here and how many people stayed, so I'll be interested to look at the stats. In an area, as Sam talked about the election, Michigan's a swing state. This Northern Michigan is just such a special place with so many different working parts. And the part of the conversation I didn't get to get to with Sam was, say we solve the problem of everybody has a home in Northern Michigan. Everybody that wants to move to Northern Michigan can move to Northern Michigan. Where do all these people drive? Because if you've ever been to Petoskey or Traverse City, the roads run along the water, and you just can't make these 2-lane highways 4, 6, 8-lane highways. It's just not possible. So I promise, if you keep watching my content, I'll keep delivering what I feel is the most important information to make you as knowledgeable and resourceful as possible, whether you're moving to Northern Michigan, whether you just want to know about Northern Michigan, whether you're going to rent in Northern Michigan. I really appreciate the opportunity to be your resource. And let me check the comments. Give me those shocking predictions. All right, here's the shocking prediction because Adam asked. I think we're going to see a little bit of a market slowdown going into 2025. We're starting to see it here now. The last 30, 60, 90 days, the market has really quieted down. And from everywhere from Traverse City to Petoskey, we're starting to see a ton of price reductions. I'm about to sell a house, I think, I'm not going to say too much, for $200,000 below asking. Now it's an expensive home, so it's not like they're getting half off. But in the last 2 days, last day, today I sold a deal for $35,000 under asking and the one for $200,000 under asking. So when you're starting to see stuff like that, you know, Lawrence Yoon, who's the economist, for the National Association of Realtors, really sharp guy. Look him up if you're not familiar. Just said interest rates are probably going to hover between 6 and 7%. If that sticks, and I'm going to have one of our lenders on here in the coming weeks. If that sticks and we get used to a lending environment where rates are between 6 and 7%, I think these prices are going to stay down for a while. Now, if we see the rates go down, into the fives, I think we're going to see a little bit of a resurgence. But everything I'm hearing right now is leading me to believe that the interest rates are going to stay higher. The market is definitely pushing back on the prices, and we're starting to see some inventory build up. So I'm telling you, I'm not here. I am here to sell, but I'm not here to hard sell. If you're thinking about moving to Northern Michigan, someone that's thinking about moving to Northern Michigan, I think there's going to be some real opportunities, from now until the spring. Is that a downward price trend? Yeah, great question, Andrew. Is it a downward price trend or just a seasonal price drop? We typically don't have as much inventory on the market as we do right now. And I feel that given in the last few years, we haven't seen, 10%, the sale to list ratio has not been 90%, meaning 10% less than the asking price. This is something, I'm no Sam Bailey, but I pay attention to this stuff specifically from a real estate agent standpoint. So I will be paying attention. I'm going to make a note that I'm going to do in one of the next lives, I'm going to compare this winter to previous winters and also share with you why listing and selling your house in the holidays is one of the best times to do so. So you have that to look forward to. But yeah, I don't know. It feels, have you ever gotten sick? Like I remember when I had COVID years ago, I was sick. I'm like, this feels different. Like this doesn't feel like a normal cold. And this is a weird analogy, but that's how I kind of feel about the market right now. Is it feels a little bit slower than it should be. And I'm talking to a lot of realtors and lenders around the area, and we've been incredibly lucky that we've sort of chugged along. But there are some agents that are having a hard time, and that's somewhat seasonal. I think some, we just had the election, which slowed things down. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens for the next 90 days or even going into the first quarter of next year. So great question. Thank you guys as always. And I look forward to talking to you. I'm not going to be on next week. I'm going to the Lions game for Thanksgiving. I had this delusional plan that I was going to hop on before the game and do a quick live, but I realized by the time I make it downtown, get into Ford Field, I'm going to have to do this live at 7:00 in the morning. And the powers that be said, let's just take next week off. So have a happy Thanksgiving if I don't talk to you before then. And we will be back after the holiday with more information to make you the most informed consumer possible. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Adam. We'll talk soon.